Let's talk about hypocrisy in the magical community when it comes to gender and gender bias. Hey, everybody, and welcome back. Welcome to another installment of A Year of Thinking Magically. It's been a minute since I've been here. There have been some issues with the broadcast platform, and then some things that came up personally that we had to take care of as we reached the end of another semester, which meant that it was time to welcome in some new students, some new instructors at the Inner Alchemy Mystery School. And so I have been really crazy busy. I apologize. I have missed you guys. And I hope everything this spring so far has been going well for you. Earlier this week, I was treated to a dramatic meltdown by an emotionally unstable, non binary individual who decidedly is not one of the most balanced and let's say mentally well individuals I've encountered in the movement, but someone who has a long history of professional victimhood. And their issue, the reason why they felt like they had to come at me, was that unless I would agree to take to task or let her take to task someone who, as a gender queer person, announced to a class that I teach that they were reclaiming the word bitch, and in this unstable persona dramatica's opinion, I myself was a fraud or ought not to be permitted to identify as genderqueer or an ally. Now, of course, in her unstable emotional state, she wrote to me afterwards and said that I pretend to be trans, which is really not how I identify. Although I do have, I don't have an issue with those who consider people like me who identify as gender queer and demi to fall under the trans umbrella. So if that's the definition, the current definition or the accepted definition, I don't have an issue with that. But it's not been my statement to identify as trans, nor is it something that I would support that anyone else has the right to tell somebody how they can identify. And in her little psychotic tantrum, I thought there was a great example of what's wrong with the new age neo-pagan gatekeepers of our society in this time, who disguise themselves as social justice advocates and trans advocates and LGBTQ advocates in our society today. So that's what I wanted to talk about. And let's go ahead and unpack this. But before we do, let me just say, let me actually turn on the comments too. Not that I'm going to be able to see what's on the screen without putting my glasses on, but I want to say that before we dive in, that I'm going to unpack this from my perspective. Nobody else's. I'm going to speak for John Michael. Nobody else. See, there's no question, and most of you know from my videos, that I have little more than complete disdain for the patriarchy, for colonialism, for heteronormativity, as a construct of modern society overall. I mean, I've talked about this in all 10 of my books that have been published, in hundreds of articles, hundreds of lectures and classes that I've taught through the years. But make no mistake about it, in the hands of the neo-pagans, the matriarchy could potentially become just as toxic of a concept. And I've not been shy about pointing out why, particularly lately. You see, I have difficulty with the notion that we can claim to be trans allies if our verbiage is still buying into and supporting the binary gender construct. And I understand it's going to take time for us to move beyond that. As a genderqueer and demi guy, I don't identify as strictly male or female. I have no genital dysphoria nor desires to choose one gender predominantly over the other for myself. It's my identity. I believe that gender is a spectrum, and I believe that metaphysically as well as physically. And so I believe that as we mature in terms of scientific, psychological, and societal understanding and awareness, eventually we will move away from gender duality. And so I support that. I work on behalf of that. That's what I want for our society. And I feel the same way about gender as I do about racism. They're human constructs that serve no real value in a postmodern world. Unlike racism, which has served no real value in any society at any time in history, gender is something that we've evolved into our understanding, but it is no longer a useful construct. We can do better. So no, I have no intention of chastising the genderqueer person who said that they were reclaiming the word bitch for themselves. In fact, I applaud them and I join them. He didn't say that they were reclaiming the word for themselves and for the whole rest of the world. They just said they were reclaiming it for themselves. And I'm doing the same thing. And if this psychotic gatekeeper feels compelled to badmouth me from her temple of vaginal grievance, that is completely her prerogative. And I support her prerogative to do so. But it's not going to be tolerated if she attempts to hurt any of my students or my loved ones, or she attempts to fuck with my work. See, I've been accused of outing people for their mental illness, which is similarly nonsensical and baseless, since the only time I ever talk about people's mental illness outside of my own mental health issues, which I talk about publicly and openly, is during discussions with people themselves who identify as having mental health issues, who talk about it on my show, or in vague generalized references like this one, in which the person or persons themselves are not mentioned by name or identified in any other manner. And here's why I think all of this matters. Here's why I felt like this had to be a broadcast that was done. Our world has experienced the tragic oppression of matriarchal societies, the destruction of matriarchal societies, and the damage that the patriarchy has inflicted upon us through the ages, including damages done by the occult and neo-pagan religious traditions for millennia now. I truly believe that at this point in time, the ancient ancestors and the primordial mothers are weaving their energies in powerful ways with the positive aspects of the archetypal fathers to create something new, to give cosmic birth to the genderqueer offspring of postmodern magic and mysticism. So if that means that militants out there who are desperate to hang on to their egocentric and narcissistic need for implied relevance and recognition are going to have a meltdown once in a while, then I'm okay with that. If it means they have to badmouth me on social media, Gaten Gesundheit. Because change is coming. Gaia is responding with a non-binary energy that will transform and is transforming the cosmos. And whatever I can do to serve humankind and to encourage people to heal, to reclaim their voice, to take back their power, I'm all for it. So I wanted to put this out there because we're getting ready to go into the month of the archetypal mother. And I believe that first of all, we have to respect where people are coming from. So for some people, the archetypal mother is anthropomorphized into various individual mothers. For some people, they see the overlapping of those persons. Some of them see synchronization at play. Others, like myself, see this subtle interweaving of the energies of the primordial mother, the divine feminine within, to create an expression or an aspect of the divine feminine. And I believe that at the same time, it's through this shift toward that matriarchy, once again, that the patriarchy, as it gets dismantled and destroyed, is like an onion peeling away layers, so that the divine masculine is once again exposed in an unbroken, undamaged, non-manipulative form. And so the divine feminine and the divine masculine come together and they create something new. And I believe that our society is coming to that point where we're ready for something new. I believe that the magical community is coming to that point where they're ready for something new. And so that's why you see within the neo-pagan community some beautiful expressions of their religion. And as many of you know, their religion is not something I identify with. It's not something I can relate to. It's not something I personally find value in for me, but something which I recognize in these new expressions that we see out there, that some of the leading names in the neo-pagan and pop culture witchcraft communities are stepping up and saying, here, this is the way we can express our tradition that includes everyone, that's inclusive and affirming and healing of all people. Let's break down those gender biases. Let's break down those racial biases. Let's break down all of the lines we've drawn in the sand. And so I think that because this new creation, this new genderqueer spirit is beginning to manifest itself as the primary archetype, Gaia is allowing those healing waters to reach out across the planet. And the divine masculine is taking those electrical currents or the 0 point energy that some people refer to as ley lines and creating that matrix. And so we have the as above, so below principle manifesting itself in our society. So no, I will not condemn a genderqueer person who just happens to look like or present as male or be identified as male by someone else, including another trans person who just happens to have a big mouth and thinks that I should condemn them for reclaiming the word bitch because she doesn't like the word. Tough shit. If you don't like the word bitch, don't reclaim it for yourself. But do not tell me that you are a trans ally if you're going to operate from the perspective of there being male and female. And in her perspective, that person had no business to reclaim the word bitch because he doesn't know how hurtful that is to women. He doesn't identify strictly as male. And so if he reclaims it for himself, he has a fucking right to reclaim it for himself, period. So don't tell me you're a trans ally and then attempt to discredit or invalidate another trans person's right to reclaim their voice, to reclaim their identity, and to speak for themselves. Speak for yourself, just as I'm doing right now. I'm not talking for anyone else other than John Michael, a genderqueer demi-person who has had it with the hypocrisy, the gatekeeping, and the bullshit that gets passed off in the new age world. So if you want to go ahead and impress everybody with your stupid ass posts about star seeds and indigos and this and that, go ahead, knock yourself out on your Facebook wall. But do not come after me or my people and attempt to invalidate them for reclaiming their voice and their power. That's all I have to say.